I'm involved in the campaign against climate change trade union group as well, and one of the things I always tell people, because I'm also involved in promoting the 1 million climate jobs pamphlet, which I just happen to have a copy with me here, is that if I'm wrong about climate change, the worst thing that can possibly happen is we'll create 1 million jobs. Whereas if they're wrong about climate change, we're really in deep doo-doo, to use a more polite expression. I also want to raise a point which nobody else raised, and that's this guy called, you might have heard him, Sir Nicholas Stern. Nicholas Stern was asked by the government to accept climate change is happening, that's why they set up a Department of Environment and Climate Change, about the actual cost of climate change. And basically the conclusion of his research was that it's going to cost 20 times more in 10 years' time to basically, solve the type of things that are happening now then. So in other words, I put it in simple terms. Imagine somebody coming to you and saying, your roof's done in. If you fix it now, it'll cost you £1,000 quid, but if you leave it for another 10 years, it's going to cost you 20,000 quid because all gable end of your wall's going to fall down or whatever. Most sane people would even probably borrow money to fix the roof now in order to avoid the bigger cost down the line, and yet we seem to have a government here that doesn't give a toss about what the consequences of all this are. Now, even if fracking for shale gas and coal bed methane, as we've got here, didn't detrimentally affect the environment, which of course it does, and there's loads of evidence to show that, and it didn't have an effect on climate change, the fact of the matter is it's a finite resource. So consequently, however long it takes, 40 years, 20 years, 50 years, 60 years, it doesn't really matter. At the end of that time, we're faced with the same problem as we have now, is how do we generate our energy? And it strikes me it'd be a lot more sensible to actually invest in the type of proposals that are being put forward in the 1 million climate jobs pamphlet, which will put a third of our unemployed in this country back to work, doing radical things like insulating people's homes. That'll bring down the gas and electricity bills, and developing tidal power, we're surrounded by sea with some of the biggest tides, all that type of thing. That's a much better approach. So, I'd urge people to support this and urge you, because that is the alternative to fracking for shale gas. We don't need it. Just one final point, because they all mentioned about it's a good transition fuel. Well, as it's been shown in America, the average leak per well of all these fracking wells is between 3.5% and 7.5%. Now, bear in mind, methane gas is 24 times more toxic a greenhouse gas. Actually, what that means, if it's roughly about 5, we'd be better off building coal-fired power stations in terms of addressing the issue of climate change. So bollocks to that argument, and we should be totally against it. It's great to see you all here today. I hope you can all come more regular. We'll be having obviously a lot of protests like this as time goes on, and if you can all bring one more person every time we come, you can imagine we'll exponentially grow until we're massive. Just to say, there's a final finish. We've made a banner to say that we're standing in support of the people of Punjesti in Romania, which we're going to get after. It'd be great if we can have a group photo behind that before we march behind the PCS band, who are just down there practicing, I think you might be able to hear, so that we can show our solidarity to people in Romania who are fighting Chevron, doing more or less the same thing over there as what's going on here.